The sun was sinking low over the dry plains of Arizona, painting the horizon in red and gold, when Jacob Turner's horse stumbled on a half-buried skull near the creek. The poor rancher, thin, worn by sun and debt, reined in his horse and stared. It wasn't unusual to find bones out here, but something in the air felt wrong. The wind carried a faint groan, soft but desperate. He slid off the saddle and followed the sound through the brittle brush until he saw them. Two enormous figures lying by the rocks, half covered in dust and blood. They were women, Apache by their dark braids and tribal tattoos, both towering at least a head taller than any man Jacob had ever met. Their chests barely rose with breath. One had an arrow still buried in her side, the other's arm twisted at a brutal angle. He could have turned away. God knows the Apache had taken enough from him before. His cattle raided, fences burned, and a bullet scar on his shoulder from a skirmish 2 winters ago. But Jacob wasn't built for hate. He tied his horse to a branch, knelt beside the first woman, and said softly, "Easy now. I'll help." He dragged them, one at a time, onto his wagon, though it nearly broke his back. The younger one murmured something in Apache, her voice cracked like dry bark. Jacob didn't understand, but her eyes met his, full of fear and pain. By the time he got them to his ranch, the stars were out and coyotes howled across the barren hills. His ranch wasn't much, a small cabin, 1 barn, and a few scrawny cows. His wife had died of fever 3 years back, and the silence had been his only companion since. Now, as he laid the wounded women on his bed, that silence broke under their ragged breathing. He boiled water, tore up old sheets, and worked by lantern light. The arrow came out with a gush of dark blood, and he stitched the wound with trembling hands. He whispered prayers he hadn't spoken since his wife's burial. When dawn came, both women were still alive. For the next 2 days he tended to them like kin. He brought broth, changed bandages, and sat on the porch at night, wondering if he had just invited death to his doorstep. The Apaches didn't forgive easily. If anyone saw their tracks leading to his land, they'd think he'd captured them or worse. But on the 3rd day, when the older sister opened her eyes and spoke halting English, Jacob realized fate had other plans. "Why, help us?" she asked weakly. Jacob shrugged. "Ain't right to let anyone die thirsty in the dust," he said. The younger one, her name was Naya, watched him quietly, eyes like dark firelight. Her sister, Tala, nodded. "Our enemies, Comanche. They attacked near river. You saved our lives." Jacob only nodded and poured her water. By nightfall, the women could sit up. Their strength returned quickly. Too quickly, it seemed. They were enormous, muscles taut like drawn bows, yet graceful in every movement. When Jacob went out to check the fence, he saw them in the yard, lifting his water barrels like they were sacks of feathers, helping repair the broken post. "We repay debt," Tala said firmly. Jacob smiled. "You don't owe me a thing." But they didn't stop. They cleaned, fixed the roof, even repaired his wagon wheel. That night they sat by the fire, and Naya hummed a song, low, haunting, ancient. Jacob felt something stir in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. For a fleeting moment he forgot they were from a tribe once at war with his own kind. They were just people, lost and found by grace. But peace doesn't last long on the frontier. At dawn the next day, Jacob woke to the sound of hooves, dozens of them. He stepped outside, heart hammering. On the ridge above his ranch, riders appeared one by one, like ghosts in the morning mist. Apache warriors, painted, armed, and grim. At their head rode a giant man with eagle feathers in his hair and a chest like a bear's. His gaze was sharp as a knife. Naya and Tala stepped out beside Jacob, silent and proud. "Father," Tala said quietly. The chief dismounted. The earth itself seemed to bow beneath his boots. "So," he rumbled, his voice deep as thunder, "this is the man who saved my daughters." Jacob froze. The chief's daughters? The chief, Cochise himself, walked closer. Jacob could feel the weight of his stare. Every Apache warrior had their arrows drawn, waiting for a single signal. You, the chief said slowly, could have left them. Many white men would. Instead, you brought them to life again. Jacob swallowed hard. I just did what was right. The chief's lips curved, not quite a smile. Right, he echoed, tasting the word like it was foreign. You think you understand right and wrong on this land? He turned to his warriors. This man saved my blood, but he is still one of those who took ours. What should his reward be? The warriors murmured among themselves. Naya stepped forward, defiant. Father, he risked his life for us. We owe him. Tala added, if not for him, your daughters would be ash by now. The chief raised his hand for silence. He looked at Jacob again, eyes burning with something unreadable. You are poor, he said finally. Your land is dying. Your cattle thin. You have lost much. Jacob nodded slowly. That's true enough. The chief turned to Naya and Tala. He gave you life. Now he must receive something equal. The words hung heavy in the air. Jacob's heart pounded. Chief, I didn't help for reward. But the old warrior cut him off. It is not reward. It is decision. He motioned to his men. 2 riders brought forward a pair of horses, strong and black as midnight. Behind them others carried sacks heavy with grain, hides, and weapons. And then, in a voice that made every Apache bow their heads, the chief declared, From this day, the land around this ranch belongs to Jacob Turner. No Apache shall harm him or take what is his. He is under the protection of my blood. Jacob stood speechless. The chief's word was law across the Apache lands. No settler had ever been given such a vow. He looked at Naya, who smiled faintly. Father's decision, she whispered, but there was more. The chief stepped closer again. And one more thing, he said. My youngest daughter will stay. Naya gasped. Father. But he raised a hand. She owes life debt. She will serve him until that debt is repaid. Jacob's breath caught. Chief, that's not necessary, he said quickly, but the old man shook his head. Decision is made. He mounted his horse, looked down at Jacob, and added quietly, You saved what no one else would. Remember, mercy is a blade sharper than hate. Use it well. Then he rode off, his warriors vanishing like dust into the sunrise, leaving behind silence. And Naya. For a long moment, Jacob and Naya stood there, not speaking. The morning light painted her face in gold, her eyes fierce, but soft. Looks like you're stuck with me, rancher, she said finally, a wry smile touching her lips. Jacob chuckled, still dazed. Guess I could use some help around here. She looked at him, then at the horizon where her people disappeared. I will work until the debt is gone, she said firmly. Jacob nodded, but deep down he knew something had changed. It wasn't debt or duty anymore. It was destiny. Days passed, then weeks. Together, they rebuilt the ranch, stronger than ever. With Naya's help, the land flourished. She knew how to find water beneath dry soil, how to plant herbs that healed wounds, how to read the stars. Jacob learned her tongue, her stories, her laughter. The loneliness that haunted him slowly faded, replaced by something he hadn't dared to feel in years, hope. And every night as they sat by the fire, Naya would look toward the hills and whisper, He watches. Jacob would nod. Then let him see we're still alive. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mesas, Naya said softly, You showed mercy, Jacob Turner. My father's decision was not punishment, it was trust. Few men are worthy of that. Jacob looked at her, the firelight dancing in her eyes. Maybe mercy's the only thing that keeps us human, he said. She smiled. Then be human always. And as the night wind swept across the prairie, Carrying the sound of drums far in the distance, Jacob realized that the chief's shocking decision wasn't just a gift of land or protection. It was a bridge between worlds once divided by hate. A poor rancher and a proud Apache girl, bound not by blood but by compassion. A story whispered for generations in the desert wind of how one man's kindness changed everything.